Welcome. Joining me now to discuss our quest for carbon neutral and the dollars and cents of renewable projects is City National Bank's Managing Director, Renewable Power Project Finance, Marc Galindo. So Marc, thanks so much for joining us. I want to dive in right now with, as leaders are kind of grappling with how to work toward their company's energy goals, what the landscape is really like. What is happening in terms of large scale energy transition and what's new right now?
Well, glad to be here. Thanks for having me. Just to jump right into it, there's been a huge transition. It's been growing really fast. Solar and wind have become a major part, although still somewhat of a small fraction of our energy power needs in the United States. And I would say that 20% now of the entire grid is now from renewable sources. That includes geothermal and hydroelectric power, which has been around for a while, and includes solar and wind. Solar has grown 60-fold in the last decade, and will continue to see some growth over the next decade as well. Wind's grown, a pretty reasonable 3 times in that amount of time, so relatively not as fast, but certainly still rapid growth. We expect that this will continue for decades now. Although I think in terms of energy transition, we probably won't see a grid that is majority renewable for quite some time.
So what is and when is that inflection point coming?
That's really great, because I think there are a lot of ambitious goals at the state, in the municipal and the federal levels to try and get to 100% renewable probably by 2050. There are a number of goals out there. I think though, realistically at this pace, we're probably going to get somewhere around 40-50% of our grid by 2050 from renewable sources. I would say that, but there should be hope though, because there's a lot to happen. There's a lot of things that can happen in the next couple of decades to accelerate that growth. And I think that we're positioned well as a bank to try and help finance some of those projects to get to that goal.
So let's talk about financing, because there are big upfront costs involved in these projects. So how do the numbers make sense?
As a bank that's committed to our clients, we try to find creative ways of financing a lot of these projects and not just going with standard solutions and project finance. These are new types of projects that are happening all the time, new business models that are being created. But ultimately, we're trying to provide a loan that can be repaid by a very predictable cash flow stream. A lot of times that revenues from utility companies, which are very safe in my mind. A lot of those times they come from various corporations, from individuals. What we try to do is we try to predict the long-term nature of people buying power from these projects and then create a financing structure around that.
So in terms of the long term, and we mentioned this a little bit before in that inflection point that people are looking at, what does the horizon look like in terms of buying power, the long game here, so to speak?
It's interesting you ask. I mean, as anyone can tell you, anyone who's had solar panels in the house, you don't have to buy all of your power from the utility company. Although still a lot of power is being sold to the utility companies from renewable projects, which then gets sold to the ultimate customer. I think corporations, individuals, and utility companies have a number of ways in which to source renewable power, and they'll continue to grow. Lots of business models that are being developed today. For instance, instead of buying power from a utility company, which then sources it from a large project may actually pool a number of subscribers, both residential and small businesses, together in what's called a community solar garden, and then actually have those subscribers purchase that power as a pool from those projects. I think those types of developments will continue to happen, and there will be numbers of ways that individuals and corporations will be able to buy power.
So you mentioned the various stakeholders that are out there. I mean, look, there's the consumers and there's corporations and there's governments as well. So who helps meet the goals and overcome the barriers to make this all actually happen?
It's a great question. I think it's everybody. I think individuals play a role. I think corporations are certainly playing a much larger role than they ever used to in sourcing the power directly themselves. And I think governments at all levels, again, municipal, state, and federal, will continue to have to develop policies to help, continue the growth in this area, especially if we want And I do believe that most people want a sustainable future. If we're all committed to that, I think policies will have to adapt to incentivize people and corporations to buy more green power.
Everybody plays a role here. Are we accelerating fast enough, though?
No, I mean, if you look at the rate today, we probably aren't going to hit a very, we aren't going to hit 100% renewable power within 3 decades, which I think is what a lot of goals are at the state and federal levels are trying to hit right now. But I do believe that we're still early on in the game. I do believe that we will continue to see innovation, both in technology and in business models. And I do believe that the policies will continue to adjust to make this, a reality in the next 3 decades. So I think with all those things happening, I think it's an exciting time to continue to look and find ways of being helpful to the industry and financing this. But we're not there yet. We're not there yet, but I do believe that we're heading in the right direction.
I like your hope and your optimism, but I guess just to drill down a little bit, because you can also hear that there's challenges out there, right? And are these realistic goals? And then if we know what the barriers to achieving them are, how to address them, I guess would be the next part. Like, I guess, is that where your hope comes from? You can see the end game?
I can see the end game. I think it's just a matter of believing that people, corporations are all moving this direction. If you looked at the awareness of the average individual or the average corporation 10 years ago about global warming, I think most people would say that they understood what the issues were, but they weren't quite sure how they were going to help with that. I think today most people get and have an idea that they can contribute to this by buying renewable sources of power. They continue to ask for it in large demand, and I think that ends up driving a lot of this. Is if more people continue to say we want more of this, I think the businesses and the developers who work on these projects will respond. I think the government will respond by creating more incentives, and I think we'll eventually get there.
In terms of investment dollars flowing in, what are you seeing with supply and excitement around that? I mean, you've talked about the demand for the projects actually there, but in terms of investing, is that there as well?
The investing is there. A lot of the growth in the last probably 5 years has been institutional money from your large asset managers coming in to invest in these projects. Now, if you believe these projects are like utility companies, which to a large extent they are inherently very safe. And so they provide a very nice, stable return for investors. And I think the large institutions have come on and brought private capital to finance a lot of these projects. I do believe, though, with the growth of green ETFs, with different types of bond products that are coming out, I believe the retail investor will actually become a larger portion of that mix. And then I think there are a number of foreign investors that also see the opportunity of the U.S. to make this economy a lot more green. Europe has been a very big player. There's been at least $400 billion invested from Europe in the United States in power projects in the last decade. And that's huge. And I think that will continue as well.
For everybody listening right now and that's interested in this space and the financing that's around it, what is the one takeaway that you want them to walk away with as they look at getting involved or accelerating the trends that you're seeing?
There's probably a couple of takeaways, but if there's one, I think it's just continue to focus on trying to solve the problem. It's going to take work from everybody. And I think all that it needs is just some consistency from all parties to try and put things together. If there's one thing that we probably need to focus on is just to try and make it predictable. I think predictable markets are markets that end up growing. And so if everybody kind of contributes and understands that that they can contribute a little bit, that they can that they are working towards a specific goal, which is to try and be renewable on the grid 100% by 2050. and we can focus on trying to get there, I think we can probably find a way for everybody to get there. It just is about consistency.
All right, that's a good place to leave it. Marc Galindo with City National Bank, thank you so much for talking to us.
Oh, thank you so much. Thanks for having me.